Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we are going to understand one of the most important topics in Terraform, dependencies, especially implicit dependencies and explicit dependencies, and how they behave when we deploy resources in Azure using the Azure ARM provider. Okay, so let me write the topic here today's, and that is dependencies. Dependencies. Okay, so especially two dependencies we are going to cover implicit dependencies and explicit dependencies. Okay, so our agenda, I can say today's I'll cover that what dependency means in Terraform and implicit dependency with Azure examples, explicit dependencies using that depends on, and I'll show you that some of code. Okay, and I'll tell you the real world cases where explicit dependencies is necessary, and I'll tell you the best practices what we can have. Okay, so let me give you the definition of dependency in Terraform. Okay, so what is dependency in Terraform? So dependency means one resource must exist before another resource can be created. Okay, so this is the means of dependency only. So for example, in Azure, I can say a subnet must exist before an IC. Okay. So again, the next example I can say an IC network interface card must exist before a virtual machine. Okay. So that virtual machines it means that virtual machines is depends on an IC, and an IC is depends on subnet, and a resource group must exist before almost everything. Okay, so only before creating any resources, we create resource group. As already I told you that resource group act as a container. Okay, So Terraform builds a dependency graph. Okay, based on that graph, Terraform creates resources in the right order, and it also creates resources in parallel if there is no dependency. Okay, yeah. So I'll write here example. An IC must before a VM. Okay, and one more example I can write: a resource group must exist before almost everything. Everything. Okay, and I told you that dependency graph. According to that dependency graph, Terraform creates the things. Okay, and and right order, or if there is no dependency, it can go parallelly. Okay, so this is why Terraform is fast. It parallelizes wherever possible. Okay, so Terraform does not follow the file order. It follows the dependency order. Okay, in let me show you the code. Okay, let me create the today's folder. 04012026. Let me open in VS Code. Yeah, now here. Okay, I need to take the version.tf also. Hmm, yeah. Now we have Terraform. Now we have main.tf. Yeah, here. Yeah, now you can see here. Okay, Terraform. I told you that Terraform does not follow, the file order. Okay, it follows the dependency order. Means whatever the dependency it have. Okay, it creates, that dependency graph and all, and based on that graph, Terraform creates resources in the right order. If I can say from this thing, the first Terraform notes that they need to create resource group first. Okay, then only it will create the things after that. Okay, wherever the dependency is there. So Terraform graph. Let me discuss something about Terraform graph. Okay, Terraform graph, it decides how Terraform decides the order. Okay, so Terraform decides order based on, three things. The first, references to the another resources attributes. Here we can see line number 15 and 16. Okay, so it references to the another resources attribute here, like that it has this thing. So this is called that implicit dependency. Okay, this is called that implicit dependency. Okay, this creates that implicit dependency here. So the second one is that depends on meta argument. Okay, if we have another file, okay, and we want to make it dependencies over that resource group or whatever any other resources, we can use that depends on meta argument, and this creates explicit dependencies. Okay, let me write. Okay, Terraform graph means how Terraform decides the order. Okay, so you know I'll yeah. So Terraform decides the order based on the first thing references to the another resources. Okay, that is implicit dependency, and we have depends on meta argument. That is, it creates that explicit dependency. Okay, and some provider level hidden behaviors. Okay, it have, and that is Azure is famous for this. Okay, so we will now let's understand that implicit dependency first. Okay, so implicit dependency is when Terraform automatically understand that resource B depends on a resource A because resource B references resource A. Okay, so here I'll tell you with the example here. So implicit dependency, what I told that Terraform automatically understand. Here Terraform automatically understand that resource B means virtual network, you know, depends on resource group. Okay, because that resource B in means the virtual network we gave references of resource A in line number 15 and 16. Okay, so I can write here. If I'll write example, then I can put this code from line number 7 to line number 21. Okay, so here resource B I can say as a virtual network and resource A as a resource group. Okay, so I show you the basic example here. If I create a resource group and then create a virtual network using the resource group name, Terraform automatically understand that the RG must be created first. Okay, so here we can see in these two line, uh, line number 15 and 16. Here these two lines create implicit dependency. Okay, and we need to give that the resource type here, then the block name here, and the what particular reference we are taking. Okay, and from these two lines we set it that first resource group will create and then virtual network will create. So same thing we can have that implicit dependency here, that subnet is dependent on virtual network. Okay, here we can see subnet depends on vnet. From this code we can say, so subnet automatically depends on vnet, so no extra configuration needed here. And I see where I can see the NIC code. Yeah, NIC is dependent on that subnet. Okay, from this then we can say this. Okay, subnet ID. With this subnet ID we need this, so we can say that NIC depends on subnet because it uses the subnet ID. Okay, and virtual machine. Uh, yeah, the virtual machine here we can say that VM depends on NIC. Okay, so network interface ID. If we can say network interface ID, yeah, line number 114, you can say here that we need to give network interface ID and it will take from NIC. So it is dependent on NIC. This virtual machine is dependent on NIC. So first NIC will create, then VM will create. So these are the examples for implicit dependencies. Okay. Okay. Now I'll tell you the example of explicit dependency. Okay. explicit dependencies. So explicit dependency means, you know uh, we manually force order using the depends on meta argument when Terraform cannot automatically detect the relationship. Okay, so I'll write here definitions for you so that you can take notes. Okay, so explicit dependency means we manually force order using the depends on meta argument when Terraform cannot automatically detect the relationship. Okay, so here the key rule: use depends on only when you must, because too much explicit dependency reduces parallelism and makes plans slower and harder to maintain. So wherever depends on not required, don't give it. Okay, just try to use that implicit dependency. Okay, now I'll show the code here. If the code is in the same configuration file, we use implicit dependency. But if we have another file, another Terraform file, .tf file, then we need to use explicit dependency. Let me create here another .tf file, and that is, I'll write explicit .tf. Hmm. Yeah. Now I'm going to copy this code and I'm pasting here. Now you can see we have resource group in main.tf. Okay, and we have another code of virtual network in another .tf file. So I need to change the block here, block name and vnet name. Okay, yeah, then I need to give the exact name of resource group. Then location. Yeah, so when Terraform cannot detect dependencies, here you can see Terraform cannot detect any dependency here. So dependency is not through direct attribute reference, you can say. Okay, uh, we have some common situations. Okay, and I am telling you the common situation here, that when Terraform cannot detect dependencies. So first, dependency is not through direct attribute reference. Second, we can say dependency is through side effect. Okay. Third, I can say Azure takes time to fully register a resource. Okay. Fourth one, I can say you are using the data sources that read after creation. Okay. That is the different situation we have. And we have that the fifth one, RBAC and the role assignment propagation delays. Okay. In that condition, Terraform cannot detect dependencies. Okay. So I am telling you the first example, then I'll tell you the second one, then third one, okay, so that you can understand this explicit dependency. Here, Terraform cannot find any dependencies here, okay. So to give this as a explicit dependency, we need to put here depends on, then we have to give that block of RGS1. RGS1. Yeah, this one. So we telling we guys are telling forcefully Terraform that we have dependency on resource group. Means actually the configuration file of resource group is in another .tf file, and we have another virtual network configuration file in another file. So we need to give dependency as explicit dependency. Okay, if we have in same folder, we can same configuration file we can give as how implicit is acting there. Okay, but it is in different .tf file, then we need to provide this kind of depends on things. Okay, so resource group is not in this configuration file, so we need to provide depends on here, then we can create. If we have now now if we want to create subnet here, then we can again create subnet here. Okay, and we can give this as depends on, not depends on, actually the vnet is in the same configuration file, so we don't give any depends on here. It will directly take as implicit one. Okay, from line number 16 you can see here. Okay, so I'll write rg name as this one, and I'll put line number 16 as this implicit dependency. I'll change the name of block, and here I can write 2. Okay, so let me do the Terraform plan and all. So I'll copy this code. Yeah, so this is the example. Okay, the next example I can say that we create an SG and then associate it with to the subnet. If I'll show here, yeah, let me write Terraform plan. So if I'll show you the, yeah, now you can see the 16 to add. Okay, yesterday it was showing that 14. Now we added 2 as a explicit dependencies, that vnet and subnet, so that it has increased in number 2, and now it is 16. Okay, so Yeah. Now come to this again. I'll try to explain you. Hmm. Yeah. We created here subnet and we created that NSG. Okay. So with the help of this implicit dependency, okay. So this is this is still implicit. Okay. So we don't need depends on here. In this, we are not giving depends on here. Okay. So these are the things of explicit and implicit dependencies. So wherever we have, different things, like if we have in same configuration file, we can use implicit dependency. But if we have in another configuration file, we can use explicit dependency, that is depends on. Okay. So I showed you that Terraform init and Terraform plan, and let me do the Terraform apply. I am not going to create virtual machines, it will take time. So let me do one comment. Yeah. Now again I write Terraform plan. Now it will show only four, five, five. Yeah, one, two, three, and two, four explicit dependency. Means it will show five, I think. Okay, one random is creating, so it is six. Okay, so let me do Terraform apply dash dash auto dash approve. So while it is creating, let me open my Azure portal. So it is creating. Let me check how much. This is the free account, and let me see how much billing it went. Yeah, it goes to 5.79K. Okay. So what is the name of resource group here? My RG2. You can see my VNet 1, my VNet 2 is created with the help of implicit dependencies as well as explicit dependencies. Okay. And inside that this VNet 1, we can check that subnet is also created like here. my subnet 2. Okay, then we have another subnet in vnet 2. uh, it gave us as a 400 error. Let me check what is this error means. So this is the copilot you will get inside this VS Code, and whatever the error, whatever the explanation you need, you can uh, take the help with this chat GPT. Okay, copilot. This is copilot. Okay. Okay, so this address prefixes, it has overlapped with this explicit dependencies. Okay, so let me change here as 3. Now if you can check, yeah, it is still creating. Okay. Yeah, now if we can see, okay, let me again go to RG2. showing. Let me check again. Vnet 1 and subnet. 2 and 3 it is created. Why it is not created in with this? Let me change address prefix. Terraform plan. I think it will say, it will tell us that nothing to change, like that. Okay, actually here you can see that it reference to that the previous VNet. Okay, so it is created inside that VNet. Okay, if I'll do here one, not one, explicit, then it work. Okay, so you have to give the exact block name. Okay, so that it comes inside that particular resources. Now you can say what it will do. One to add and one to destroy. So it has two subnet here. So what it will do, it will delete here one subnet and it will create one in this VNet 2. Okay. Yeah, now you can see my 72 is created, and if you can see my VNet 1, you can see my 701 is created. Okay, so we have some different command, like we can create show graph command. Okay, and we can see in PNG form. So common mistake what we are doing, we use hard coded strings, that breaks implicit dependencies. Okay, so if you write resource group name as a plain string, Terraform cannot link it to the RG resources here. Uh, null, yeah, here. If you will write that this resource group directly here, in the place of name, line number 16, then you know that Terraform cannot link it to the RG resource. Okay, so you have to give this link as it is what I gave here for implicit dependencies. Okay, so hard coding breaks the graph. Okay, so referencing resource attribute builds the graph. So some people use depends on everywhere, and that is not recommended. Why? Because it slow down the apply. Okay, like it removes the parallelism. The next thing is makes code harder to maintain and hides the real architecture. Okay, if you are using depends on everywhere, then so wherever it is required, we can go for that. Even and the third, we can say that you know Azure eventual consistencies. Even the correct dependencies, Azure may say resource not found for a few seconds. That is not your Terraform code issue. Okay, so it may be you principal, role assignment issue, that RBAC issue and all. So it may be like this. So that's it for the today. And if you want, in the next live sessions, we can cover that another topic, that is you know uh, the life cycle block. Okay, very very important and very secure, we can say. Okay, life cycle block. So if you found this video useful, please like and subscribe this channel. Okay, and thank you. See you in next session.